This text is for question number 1 to 3. The cause of tooth decay is acid, which is produced by bacteria in the mouth. The acid removes minerals from tooth enamel, allowing tooth decay to begin. The saliva in your mouth encourages remineralization and line neutralizes the acid. The rate at which bacteria in the mouth produce acid depends on the amount of plaque on the teeth, the composition of the microbial flora, and whether the bacteria of the plaque have been primed by frequent exposure to sugar. To keep your teeth healthy, a regular dental hygiene program should be followed. Removing plaque with a toothbrush and dental floss temporarily reduces the numbers of bacteria in the mouth and thus reduces tooth decay. It also makes the surfaces of the teeth more accessible, enabling saliva to neutralize acid and remineralize lesions. If fluoride is present in drinking water when teeth are forming, some fluoride is incorporated into the enamel of the teeth, making them more resistant to attack by acid. Fluoride toothpaste seems to act in another way, by promoting the remineralization of early carious lesions. In addition to a regular dental hygiene program, a good way to keep your teeth healthy is to reduce your intake of sweet food. The least cavity-causing way to eat sweets is to have them with meals and not between. The number of times you eat sweets rather than the total amount determines how much harmful acid the bacteria in your saliva produce. But the amount of sweets influences the quality of your saliva. Avoid, if you can, sticky sweets that stay in your mouth a long time. Also try to brush and floss your teeth after eating sugary foods. Even rinsing your mouth with water is effective. Whenever possible, eat foods with fiber, such as raw carrot sticks, apples, celery sticks, etc., that scrape off plaque, acting as a toothbrush. Cavities can be greatly reduced if these rules are followed when eating sweets. 1. What does this passage mainly discuss? A. Good nutrition. B. Food with fiber. C. Ways to keep your teeth healthy. D. Fluoridization and cavities. 2. According to the passage, all of the following statements about plaque are true except A. It consists of acid-producing bacteria. B. It is not affected by eating sweets. C. It can be removed from teeth by brushing and flossing. D. It reduces the positive effect of saliva. 3. We can infer from the passage that one benefit of fluoride to healthy teeth is A. It strengthens tooth enamel. B. It stimulates saliva production. C. It makes teeth whiter. D. It is a replacement for brushing and flossing in dental care. This text is for question number 4 to 5. The railroad was not the first institution to impose regularity on society, or to draw attention to the importance of precise timekeeping. For as long as merchants have set out their wares at daybreak and communal festivities have been celebrated, people have been in rough agreement with their neighbors as to the time of day. The value of this tradition is today more apparent than ever. Were it not for public acceptance of a single yardstick of time, social life would be unbearably chaotic. The massive daily transfers of goods, services, and information would proceed in fits and starts. The very fabric of modern society would begin to unravel. 4. What is the main idea of the passage? A. In modern society we must make more time for our neighbors. B. The traditions of society are timeless. C. An accepted way of measuring time is essential for the smooth functioning of society. D. Society judges people by the times at which they conduct certain activities. 5. In line 4, the phrase, "this tradition," refers to A. The practice of starting the business day at dawn. B. Friendly relations between neighbors. C. The railroad's reliance on time schedules. D. People's agreement on the measurement of time. This text is for question number 6 to 7. Awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1918, German physics Max Planck is best remembered as the originator of the quantum theory. His work helped usher in a new era in theoretical physics and revolutionized the scientific community's understanding of atomic and subatomic processes. Planck introduced an idea that led to the quantum theory, which became the foundation of 20th-century physics. In December 1900, Planck worked out an equation that described the distribution of radiation accurately over the range of low to high frequencies. He had developed a theory which depended on a model of matter that seemed very strange at the time. The model required the emission of electromagnetic radiation in small chunks or particles. These particles were later called quantums. The energy associated with each quantum is measured by multiplying the frequency of the radiation, V, by a universal constant, h. Thus, energy, or E, equals hv. The constant, h, is known as Planck's constant. It is now recognized as one of the fundamental constant of the world. Planck announced his finding in 1900. But it was years before the full consequences of his revolutionary quantum theory were recognized. Throughout his life, Planck made significant contributions to optics, thermodynamics and statistical mechanics, physical chemistry, and other fields. In 1930, he was elected president of the Kaiser Wilhelm Society, which was renamed the Max II. Though deeply opposed to the fascist regime of Adolf Hitler, Planck remained in Germany throughout the war. He died in Göttingen on October 4, 1947. 6. In which of the following fields did Max Planck not make a significant contribution? A. Optics. B. Thermodynamics. C. Statistical mechanics. D. Biology. 7. The word revolutionary, as used in line 13, means A. Dangerous. B. Extremist. C. Momentous. D. Militarist. This text is for question number 8 to 10. The first 2 decades of this century were dominated by the microbe hunters. These hunters had tracked down one after another of the microbes responsible for the most dreaded scourges of many centuries: tuberculosis, cholera, diphtheria. But there remained some terrible diseases for which no microbe could be incriminated: scurvy, pellagra, rickets, beriberi. Then it was discovered that these diseases were caused by the lack of vitamins, a trace substance in the diet. The diseases could be prevented or cured by consuming foods that contained the vitamins. And so in the decades of the 1920s and 1930s, nutrition became a science and the vitamin hunters replaced the microbe hunters. In the 1940s and 1950s, biochemists strived to learn why each of the vitamins was essential for health. They discovered that key enzymes in metabolism depend on one or another of the vitamins as coenzymes to perform the chemistry that provides cells with energy for growth and function. Now, these enzyme hunters occupied center stage. You are aware that the enzyme hunters have been replaced by a new breed of hunters who are tracking genes, the blueprints for each of the enzymes, and are discovering the defective genes that cause inherited diseases: diabetes, cystic fibrosis. These gene hunters, or genetic engineers, use recombinant DNA technology to identify and clone genes and introduce them into bacterial cells and plants to create factories for the massive production of hormones and vaccines for medicine and for better crops for agriculture. Biotechnology has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. In view of the inexorable progress in science, we can expect that the gene hunters will be replaced in the spotlight. When and by whom? Which kind of hunter will dominate the scene in the last decade of our waning century and in the early decades of the next? I wonder whether the hunters who will occupy the spotlight will be neurobiologists who apply the techniques of the enzyme and gene hunters to the functions of the brain. What to call them? The headhunters. I will return to them later. Eight. What is the main topic of the passage? A. The microbe hunters. B. The potential of genetic engineering. C. The progress of modern medical research. D. The discovery of enzymes. 9. The word which in line 4 refers to A. Diseases. B. Microbe. C. Cholera. D. Diphtheria. 10. The word incriminated in line 4 is closest in meaning to A. Investigated. B. Blamed. C. Eliminated. D. Produced. This text is for question number 11 to 15. Robert Moog was an American inventor who developed the Moog synthesizer. It was one of the first synthesizers to gain widespread use as a musical instrument. Moog's synthesizers were an important line of musical innovation in rock and jazz music in the 1960s and 1970s. Robert Arthur Moog was born in Queens, a borough of New York City 75 years ago. He became fascinated with electronics as a teenager, particularly an early electronic music instrument called the theremin. Moog studied physics and electrical engineering at Queens College and Columbia University, both in New York City, and later received a Ph.D. in engineering physics Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. In 1954, while still an undergraduate student, Moog formed his own company to sell theremins and theremin kits. Soon after, Moog began working on a keyboard instrument that could replicate the sound of any musical instrument electronically. Working with American composer Herbert Deutsch, Moog introduced the prototype Moog synthesizer at a convention in 1964. The device represented a significant advance over previous electronic synthesizer because of its use of new semiconductor technology, which made it smaller and considerably cheaper than earlier machines. The Moog, as it was known, was soon in demand by musicians all over the world. In 1964, Moog began a collaboration with American composer and organist Walter Carlos, now Wendy Carlos, who released the best-selling electronic music album Switched on Bach in 1968. Rock groups such as the Beatles and Yes, and jazz musicians such as Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea began incorporating Moog synthesizer into their recordings, a trend that increased when the company introduced the compact and portable Mini-Moog in 1970. A Moog synthesizer was also prominently featured on the soundtrack to the movie A Clockwork Orange in 1971. 11. The word prominently in paragraph 3 can easily be replaced by a significantly. B. Perfectly. C. Accurately. D. Excellently. 12. The passage describes theremin as an A. Prototype of Moog synthesizer. B. Initial electronic music instrument. C. Musical instrument to replicate the sound. D. Instrument of electronic tool. 13. The pronoun it paragraph 2 refers to A. Electronic synthesizer. B. A keyboard instrument. C. Prototype of Moog synthesizer. D. New semiconductor technology. 14. According to the passage, all of the following are true about the Moog, except A. It was invented by Robert Moog. B. It was first introduced in 1964. C. It initiated new technology which was smaller and cheaper than previous. D. It was the first synthesizer in th. 15. The paragraph following the passage most likely discusses A. Collaboration between the Moog and other musicians. B. The description of compact and portable mini Moog. C. The improvement of Moog synthesizer. D. Trend in the music industry about synthesizer. This text is for question number 16 to 18. A distinctively American architecture began with Frank Lloyd Wright, who had taken to heart the admonition that form should follow function and who thought of buildings not as separate architectural entities but as parts of an organic whole that included the land, the community, and the society. In a very real way, the houses of colonial New England and some of the southern plantations had been functional. But Wright was the first architect to make functionalism the authoritative principle for public as well as for domestic buildings. As early as 1906, he built the Unity Temple in Oak Park, Illinois, the first of those churches that did so much to revolutionize ecclesiastical architecture in the United States. Thereafter, he turned his genius to such miscellaneous structures as houses, schools, OCE buildings, and factories, among them the famous Larkin Building in Buffalo, New York, and the Johnson Wax Company Building in Racine, Wisconsin. 16. The phrase "taken to heart" in line 1 is closest in meaning to which of the following? A. Taken seriously. B. Criticized. C. Memorized. D. Taken offense. 17. In what way did Wright's public buildings differ from most of those built by earlier architects? A. They were built on a larger scale. B. Their materials came from the southern United States. C. They looked more like private homes. D. Their designs were based on how they would be used. 18. The author mentions the Unity Temple because it A. was Wright's first building. B. influenced the architecture of subsequent churches. C. demonstrated traditional ecclesiastical architecture. D. was the largest church Wright ever designed. This text is for question number 19 to 21. Throughout history, people have been the victim of pickpockets. Today, pickpocketing is one of the most rapidly increasing crimes. Pickpockets are increasing in number and developing better methods to practice their skill. Approximately 1 million Americans lose money to pickpockets every year, and none is really safe from a skilled pickpockets. His victims, or marks, as they are called, can be rich or poor, young or old. During the 18th century, pickpockets were hanged in England. Large crowds of people would gather watch the hanging, which was supposed to be a warning to other pickpockets. However, in time the practice was discontinued. The reason? While people were attentively watching the hanging of a pickpockets, other pickpockets skillfully stole the money of spectators. Police officials say that the most efficient pickpockets come from South America. Many of these expert pickpockets are trained in special school called Jingle Bell schools. A pickpockets graduate from JBS when he is able to steal a wallet from a dresses dummy, mannequin, that has bells inside its pockets. Even the most well-dressed, respectable person may be a pickpocket. Some of the favorite places of pickpockets are banks, airports, racetrack, supermarkets, elevators, and train and bus stations. Oftentimes a pickpocket will work with another pickpockets as his partner. Another kind of pickpockets works outside or inside bars and specialize in stealing from women is called a purse snatcher. To avoid being the victim of a pickpocket, it's important to be very cautious and alert when in the midst of large gathering of the people. 19. The best title for the passage would be A. Pickpockets are well dressed. B. Jingle Bell schools. C. Pickpockets. D. The hanging of pickpockets. 20. The hanging of pickpockets were not continued because A. They were a large crowd of people. B. It was against humanity. C. The police were not at the hanging. D. It was not effective to stop pickpocketing. 21. Pickpocketing is crime. A. An old. B. A modern. C. A temporary. D. A contemporary. For 22 to 25, in past centuries. Native Americans living in the arid areas of what is now the southwestern United States relied on a variety of strategies to ensure the success of their agriculture. First and foremost, water was the critical factor. The soil was rich because there was little rain to leach out the minerals, but the low precipitation caused its own problems. Long periods of drought could have made agriculture impossible. On the other hand, a sudden flood could just as easily have destroyed a crop. Several techniques were developed to solve the water problem. The simplest was to plant crops in the floodplains and wait for the annual floods to water the young crops. A less dangerous technique was to build dikes or dams to control the flooding. These dikes both protected the plants against excessive flooding and prevented the water from escaping too quickly once it had arrived. The Hopi people designed their fields in a checkerboard pattern, with many small dikes, each enclosing only 1 or 2 stalks of maize, corn, while other groups built a series of dams to control the floods. A third technique was to dig irrigation ditches to bring water from the rivers. Water was sometimes carried to the fields in jars, particularly if the season was dry. Some crops were planted where they could be watered directly by the runoff from cliff walls. Another strategy Native Americans used to ensure a continuous food supply was to plant their crops in more than one place, hoping that if one crop failed, another would survive. However, since the soil was rich and not easily exhausted, the same patch of ground could be cultivated year after year, whereas in the woodlands of the eastern United States it was necessary to abandon a plot of ground after a few years of farming. In the Southwest, often 2 successive crops were planted each year. It was a common Southwestern practice to grow enough food so that some could be dried and stored for emergencies. If emergency supplies ran low, the people turned to the local wild plants. If these failed, they moved up into the mountains to gather the wild plants that might have survived in the cooler atmosphere. What does the passage mainly discuss? A. Agricultural methods of Native Americans. B. Irrigation techniques used by the Hopi. C. Soil quality in the American Southwest. D. Native American methods of storing emergency food supplies. 23. Why did farmers in the Southwest plant crops in several places at the same time? A. They moved frequently from one place to another. B. They feared that one of the crops might fail. C. The size of each field was quite limited. D. They wanted to avoid overusing the soil. 24. The word solve in line 7 is closest in meaning to A. Advance toward. B. Protect from. C. Keep in. D. Deal with. 25. Planting in the floodplains was not ideal because A. The amount of water could not be controlled. B. The crops could be eaten by wild animals. C. The floodplains were too remote to be cultivated frequently. D. Corn grows better at high elevations.